Something really weird happened today. I was walking towards the greengrocer near my apartment, and a man sitting on a flattened box on the sidewalk spoke to me in perfect English. He said,
"You know, spring onions are negi, and the round ones, those are tamanegi."
I was momentarily stunned and didn't know what to do, so I just said thank you and began to walk away. With a slightly raised voice, he said,
"One more thing. Kata means person. It's kind of like hito, but a little bit more respectful."
I didn't even know how to respond, so I just said thank you and kept walking towards the store. It wasn't until I got to the greengrocer that I remembered the conversation I had with the old man on the train. He had asked,
"Doko no kuni no kata desu ka?"
and I remember not understanding the no kata part. How could the old man have known I was struggling to understand that? I stood outside the greengrocer, which I learned was called Yaoya, and took a deep breath. I looked behind me to see if the man had followed, but he wasn't there. From inside the store, I heard a familiar, kind voice say, "Ohayou gozaimasu." It was the lady from the first day that I had visited that store. It was a welcome coincidence to see her again. I nodded and said the same thing back, "Ohayou gozaimasu." Then she said, "Kyou wa nani o kaimasu ka?" I tried to figure out what she meant. I know kyou means today and nani means what, and that she's asking a question because it ends in ka. I repeated the phrase in my head, "Kyou wa nani o kaimasu ka?" But I don't know what kaimasu means. Today, what? She seemed to understand that I was struggling and asked a different question. She said, "Nani ga hoshii desu ka?" I just learned this in Japanese from Zero Book 1. Hoshi means want. She's asking me what I want. I was planning to make a meat sauce recipe I found online, and I was there to buy some onions, but not green onions. I shuddered, flashing back to what the old man with perfect English had said to me in the street.
"You know, spring onions are negi, and the round ones, those are tamanegi."
How did he know? Then I answered, "Tamanegi ga hoshii desu." She smiled and turned and pointed to the back of the store on the right and said, "Tamanegi wa asoko desu." I had peeked ahead in my lessons and already knew that asoko means over there. I looked to where she pointed, left and right, but I couldn't see the onions. I turned back to her and said, "Doko desu ka?" She gestured to me in a way I hadn't seen before. It looked like she was shooing me away, like you would shoo away a fly. She said, "Sugu asoko desu." Then she made that shooing gesture and said, "Chotto kite," while she began walking to where she had pointed. I'm guessing she said, "Follow me," so I did. A few seconds later, we were standing in front of a bin with a large sign that said tamanegi, which I guess I missed when I first looked. I said, "Arigatou gozaimashita," and she said, "Tondemo nai desu," which also sounds like a phrase I should learn. I decided then that I would buy a small notebook to carry around to write things like this down. It would also give me a way to practice writing my hiragana, which is still really bad. I grabbed 3 plump tamanegi and rested them on my arm. The old lady nodded and walked toward the cucumber area, which I recently learned are called kyuri. I put the onions in a basket and walked to the register. The worker looked at my basket and said, 384 yen ni narimasu. I know 300 is 300, but while I struggled with 300, my brain forgot the rest of the numbers. I knew what to say in this situation. I said, "Ikura desu ka?" which means, "How much is it?" This time she said it slowly. 384 yen desu. Okay, this time I get it. 384. Although I remember learning 4 as yon, I don't know why she said yoen and not yoen. I pulled out a 1,000 yen bill and put it on the small plastic tray on the counter. She put the 1,000 yen in the register and scooped out the proper amount of change. Otsuri wa 616 yen desu. Otsuri. Otsuri must mean change. I put the change in my pocket, said goodbye to my yaoya best friend, and began walking home. As I turned the corner, I saw the same old man with perfect English sitting on the same box. He seemed to have dozed off, as his head was tilted toward his belly. I walked on the outer edge of the sidewalk, avoiding looking at him. Just as I was in front of him, he jolted awake with a snort of air. His eyes opened wide as if he had seen a ghost, and he raised both of his hands in the air as if to stop me from coming closer. And then, all of a sudden, he instantly calmed down and spoke again.
She was just asking you what you were going to buy.
What? I asked. What do you mean?
Your friend in the yaoya. She said, "Nani o kaimasu ka," right? Kaimasu just means to buy. Just look it up with its dictionary form, kau.
My heart was racing, and my brain was struggling to comprehend. Not only was this man's English way too perfect, but he seemed to know everything that had happened to me over the last 3 days, including the last 10 minutes. I was scared and I was angry. Are you following me? The old man chuckled.
Ah, yeah, I can see how you would think that.
Of course I think that. How else would you know what the lady said just now in the yaoya, and that the man on the train asked my nationality yesterday? The old man looked like he was going to speak, but his face froze just as he was opening his mouth. Then, as suddenly as he had woke, his head fell forward and he was immediately snoring deeply. I watched for a few seconds, wondering if he would speak again. I inched closer to the box he was sitting on. His hands were dirty. His clothing looked like they hadn't been washed in months. I was tempted to try to wake him, but in the moment, I thought maybe he was crazy, and honestly, I was a bit scared. I turned back towards my apartment and walked as fast as I could to get back home. I wondered if I had just imagined it all. I had to be sure. I pulled the charger off my phone and opened the dictionary app. I typed in what the old man told me to type. Ka-u. And there it was. The man was right. Kau does mean to buy, and it does conjugate to kaimasu for will buy, which is the future tense. I didn't know this word before I met that man, so it can't be my imagination. I made sure all the locks on my apartment front door were locked securely, and I think I probably should find another route to the yaoya that doesn't pass that old man on the street. Because while it's possible he might be a great resource to learn Japanese, he could also be a crazy stalker, or maybe both.